Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Boderry Seaturtle BDA007T. This watch is available from boderry.com for $139. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with the piece. So the watch comes with this Boderry gift bag, as you can see. And the watch comes in a watch box which is protected by this black cardboard outer sleeve, which one removes. This is the lid to the watch box, as you can see, branded with the Boderry brand emblem and also the logo. One removes the lid, and the travel roll sits within a foam cutout panel in the base of the watch box, vinyl coated to a high standard. So this is the travel case. It's made from PU leather, embossed with the Boderry brand emblem and also the logo. Flawless stitching throughout, very aesthetically pleasing. Metal popper on the reverse and also the front of the flap, as you can see. And the interior is nicely upholstered with a cream velour fabric. The watch sits in the base on a padded pillow cushion, as one would expect, which is also nicely upholstered. So I like this travel case. It makes a refreshing alternative to the default option of using a plastic or cardboard watch box, and bearing in mind this is a low tier price point piece at only $139, it is very good presentation. With regards to the other items, the watch comes with this owner's instruction manual, which also details the terms and conditions of the warranty. Clear, concise diagrams. The instructions are in English, and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Miyota caliber 8215 automatic. This is the plastic guarantee card that comes to the watch. Now, the thing to note is the movement in the watch, the Miyota 8215, is covered by a 2-year international warranty. However, the watch itself is not covered by the 2-year warranty, only the movement. So I think you should be mindful of this. And lastly, one also gets this Boderry branded microfiber polishing cloth. I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth, irrespective of the price point of a piece. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the Boderry Seaturtle reference BDA007T. We have a 42mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 48.3mm, a thickness of 12.4mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The genuine leather strap is grained finish and tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to the titanium buckle and tang, and as you can see, the titanium buckle and tang is signed to high standard with the Boderry brand logo engraved. Good heavy gauge of metal to the titanium buckle, brushed satin finish to the top side, underside and flanks, and beautiful lustre to the titanium. 2 keepers to the genuine leather strap, one's fixed, one slides as one would expect. I'll show you the underside to the strap. Flawless stitching throughout, as you can see it's embossed on one side with genuine leather, plenty of holes to allow for fine tuning the length. Now the thing to note is there are no quick release spring bars, and it's going to be a very tight fit to get a spring bar tool between the edges of the strap and in between the lugs, and it's going to be difficult not to damage the titanium lugs using a spring bar tool. I think that Boderry have made an error here, and they should have used quick release stainless steel spring bars, because that would negate the need for using a spring bar tool and therefore avoid damaging the interior of the titanium lugs, because it's going to be very, very tight to get a spring bar tool in there. And bear in mind this is a very thick strap, so it's going to be very difficult to get a spring bar tool to move the leather out of the way and engage the spring bar into the spring bar tool. So it's a very thick strap, as you can see, thick at the spring bar end and also thick at the buckle and tang end. It doesn't taper. I would prefer if they'd use a tapered strap which reduces in thickness from the spring bar end down to the buckle and tang end, because it's very stiff, and even with daily wear it's going to take a lot of breaking in to become soft and supple and comfortable. Really, it's impractical to use a leather strap on a dive piece which is meant to get wet. A better alternative would be to use a silicone rubber strap, or alternatively FKM rubber, because naturally rubber straps don't absorb water, whereas this leather strap will absorb water. And the problem with using a grained leather strap like this is that if it gets wet repeatedly, the grained rubber will of course delaminate, grained leather will delaminate and of course break down and split and crack. So really it's impractical to use a leather strap on a dive piece. With regards to the rest of the specification, we have a flat sapphire crystal. Now the negative of the flat sapphire crystal is there is no AR coating on the underside. When I tilt the piece at an oblique angle, you can see the reflection due to the lack of anti-reflective coating. And this is compounded by framing the date complication with a mirror polished silver frame. We've got mirror polished broad arrow style hands and mirror polished silver applied indices, so highly reflective, very shiny, and they bounce the light around underneath these flat sapphire crystal, and therefore it is very highly reflective. And it really does need AR coating, as you can see, very shiny, very reflective, and that reduces the legibility. But having said that, the dial has good symmetry. It follows the classic Submariner style dial layout, and the minute ticks are indexed around the chapter ring in white, which contrasts very well with the matte blue dial, which has a honeycomb finish to it. So if you look closely at the dial, it's one of my favourite aspects. It's got a hexagonal honeycomb finish to it, which does add interest to it. And I like the fact the dial isn't over-branded with unnecessary text or specification. We simply have the Boderry brand emblem and Boderry text logo in white at 12 o'clock. And then at the 6 o'clock position, automatic and 100 metres / 330 feet. Now, 100 metres really is a disappointment for a dive piece. 200 metres is the industry standard, and I'm confident that this watch would actually withstand 200 metres of hermetic seal because of a screw-down crown and screw-down titanium caseback. It should be able to withstand 200. So 100 metres is really poor specification. With regards to the bezel, we have a stainless steel bezel with aluminium bezel insert. The aluminium bezel insert is anodised blue to a high standard. I like the matte reflective finish to it. It's got a nice metallic look to it, and I like the lip of the sapphire crystal, which projects above the top edge of the aluminium bezel insert. So it's aesthetically pleasing, but the problem is aluminium is softer than ceramic and therefore not as scratch resistant. So this is going to wear, and it's going to be more prone to being scuffed and scratched rather than using a ceramic bezel insert. I think they should have used a blue ceramic bezel insert, which is more practical. With regards to the crown, it's solid titanium, no old finish, and as you can see, it's embossed with a Boderry brand emblem. Screw down crown, and it provides an effective hermetic seal to 100 metres. So let's test the screw down crown execution. It feels smooth. One can feel the friction of the O-ring inside the titanium crown and also the second O-ring inside the stainless steel crown tube, but it does feel smooth. There's good interface between the threading of the titanium crown and the stainless steel crown tube. So in the first position, it's the manual wind position, and one can manually wind the Miyota caliber 8215 to top it up to its maximum 42 hours. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up, so it is a pleasure to manually wind it. Pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication position, and if one rotates the crown anti-clockwise, it advances the date window, the date complication, within the framed date window. Now, it's not as smooth. I don't like the positive clicks of the 8215. I prefer the feeling of a Seiko NH35A because they have a more solid click feeling to the quick sets. The other thing is, I think they've made a mistake by using the mirror polished frame because it actually creates a shadow around the white date wheel with contrasting black Arabic numerals, and it therefore makes it harder to read the date window, because had they removed this thick silver frame around it, it wouldn't create such a shadow, and it would enhance the dates complication because the dates window would be larger without the frame. So I think they've made a mistake, and it would be better if they deleted the silver frame around the date window. But however, one can read it, although it's not as easy as if it has a Cyclops magnifier or alternatively a larger dates window. Pulling it out to the second click position is the time setting position, and as you can see, the second hand still continues to run. This is the negative of earlier versions of the 8215. They don't have hacking. The latest version of the 8215 does have hacking. Miyota upgraded it, and they also did the same with the 8315, which is the successor to it, which has a 60-hour power reserve versus the 42 of its predecessor, the 8215. So it's a shame that Boderry are using the earlier version of the 8215 without hacking, because as you can see, one cannot stop the movement dead. One cannot hack the second hand to set the time precisely to the second. It continues to run in the time setting position. So this is another advantage the NH35A has over the 8215 because it does have hacking, and I think they should have used either the later 8215, the NH35A, or alternatively a higher grade of Miyota movement such as the 9015. It's a shame that one cannot hack the movement. Pushing it back in restarts the movement, and of course the second hand doesn't stop, and so it's got a nice positive click. I'll test screwing the crown back down. Immediate thread pickup, so there's a good interface between the internal thread of the titanium crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube, but really 100 meters of hermetic seal for a screw down crown is disappointing. That's what one would expect with a push-pull crown and not a screw down crown. The case back is made from solid titanium, as you can see, nicely embossed with a mirror polished turtle logo, which fits the aesthetic of this being called the sea turtle. So they've done a good job of the engraving and also the mirror polishing to the titanium. Nice to see a titanium case back used rather than the cost-cutting measure of 316L grade stainless steel. The circumference is engraved with the specification and the reference number of the piece, which is BDA007T. So they've done a good job with the finishing, and it is low profile, which is good because it reduces the thickness of the overall thickness of the watch. And I like the scalloping to the edge. It makes a refreshing change from using the conventional milled slots in the case back. So it's very well finished, very aesthetically pleasing, and it's a good looking case back, as you can see, with the embossed turtle and the waves. Right, so we'll do a bezel test. Now, the bezel is very shallow and it has very fine scallops to it. So in order to get better purchase on it, because it's actually difficult to grip wearing a cotton glove, I'm going to remove my glove, and that will make it easier for me to do the bezel test. So it doesn't feel particularly smooth. Medium resistance, it's not too light and it's not too heavy. I would describe the resistance as being lighter than a Steinhardt Ocean 1, and I would describe it as medium, so it feels more like a Seiko bezel action on a 5KX or an SKX007, which you may be familiar with. But it doesn't feel smooth. It feels rough. The ratcheting mechanism doesn't feel even all the way through the 360 degrees. What I mean by this is it goes tight and then loose and then tight again, rather than feeling even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation. The 120 clicks should feel consistent, but they don't. They feel loose and then tight again. No back play, which is good. No lateral side to side play, so again that's good. Personally, I would prefer if they tightened up the bezel execution, if it had firmer resistance as per Steinhardt Ocean 1 or a Seiko 5KX bezel. They have heavier resistance to the clicks and it's more satisfying to use, and although tighter, it feels more solid. Now, with regards to the alignments, we have a QC issue. If you look at the Lume pip and triangle at 12 o'clock, you can see it's now slightly to the right. So if I move it to the next click, that should align it. But if you look at it, you can see the Lume pip and triangle is slightly offset to the left of the 12 o'clock triangle index on the dial. So I'll just check it a couple more times to confirm this, because I want to be consistent that I'm levelling fair criticism at Boderry for this. So as you can see, we're slightly to the right. If I move it to the next click, it should align. But we're now slightly to the left, so I'll just check it one more time. It's slightly offset by half a click, and really this is a fundamental QC issue. So now we have it slightly to the right, one more click should align it, and again it's consistently one click to the left. So really it's half a click of misalignment. This is something that is very easy to get correct, because when they're setting the bezel insert into the stainless steel bezel, they simply align the triangle and the Lume pip with the 12 o'clock index and the 12 o'clock minute tick. And there's no excuse for getting it wrong. And I think that Boderry really needs to improve the QC, because having it slightly to the left is very irritating, because it's such an easy thing when setting the bezel insert to get it correct and align it. And there's no excuse. I appreciate this is a $139 watch, it's a low tier piece, but bezel execution and bezel alignment is fundamental. So no lateral side to side play, no back play, but slightly misaligned to the left, something to consider. Right, so just bear with me, I'll put my glove back on and then we'll continue with a Lume test. Now this piece uses BGW9 Super Luminova, which is very strong specification. Bearing in mind it is a $139 piece. Right, so as always I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge up the Lume to the absolute maximum. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it's an interesting characteristic of the honeycomb dial that the honeycombs to the dial, the hexagons, are actually lumed with BGW9, although they need to have applied more layers, because as you can see, unlike a sandwich dial, the BGW9 doesn't penetrate through the dial enough, so the hexagons begin to fade quickly. But I'm just going to illuminate them again with my torch. So if you look, if I illuminate it, you can see that the hexagons are actually slightly lumed. I'll just charge it up again, you'll be able to see it before they fade away. So as you can see, the hexagons are actually lumed with BGW9, although not enough to last. They do fade very quickly. So if you look at the indices and the hands, they have applied 5 to 6 layers of BGW9 Superluminova. There's a good blue tone match between the hands and the indices. However, I think the broad arrow hands are a mistake, because this isn't an homage to the Omega Seamaster, nor is it an homage to the Planet Ocean. So it doesn't really fit the aesthetic of this watch, having Omega broad arrow style hands. I think they should have come up with their own design of hands. And really, with the Submariner dates dial layouts, again, it's a contradiction to have Omega hands used with a Submariner date style layout. So I think that they should have come up with something more original. But having said that, the BGW9 is performing to an acceptable standard. It's glowing reasonably brightly, and it will continue to glow for a good length of time. And the Lume pip is also a good match on the aluminium bezel inserts. It's the same blue colour as the indices and the hands. So the Lume performance is as one would expect with BGW9 Superluminova. Right, so let's discuss the movement used. You'll all be familiar with the Miyota Caliber 8215 automatic, which is made in Japan. It's a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement. It has 21 joules. It runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. The negative of a 3 Hz movement is, if you look closely at the second hand, you can see it stutters or judders around the dial rather than sweeping smoothly as per a 4 Hz movement running at 28,800 vibrations per hour. 21,600 is the same beat rate used by Seiko in the NH35A, and it's a characteristic that 3 Hz sweep will give a stutter or judder. So I personally prefer 4 Hz movements because I like a smooth sweep to the second hand, but however, this is subjective. For the majority of collectors, a 3 Hz second hand sweep is acceptable. So it has hand winding, which is a useful complication, but it doesn't have hacking as I've detailed. It's a shame they didn't use the later version of the 8215, or alternatively the 8315, which both have hacking. 42-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable. Now, the stated accuracy of the 8215 is -20 to +40 seconds per day. So a rather wide accuracy range. This one is running consistently at +12 seconds per day, which is well within the -20 to +40, but however, +12 isn't very impressive, so there's room for improvement on the regulation of the 8215. They can be regulated to within ±5 seconds per day, so Boderry could tighten up on the regulation. I think it certainly should be within ±10 seconds per day. ±12 really is running too fast to be satisfactory. Right, so lastly I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So in order to evaluate the piece, one has to study the finishing to the bezel, the head of the piece, and also the caseback. The finishing to the stainless steel bezel and aluminium bezel insert are very high standard. The mirror polishing to the scallops to the teeth of the bezel are done to a good standard, no sharp edges to the teeth. Beautiful lustre to the flanks, which are longitudinally brushed satin finished to the titanium case, and also beautiful finishing to the embossing and engraving to the titanium caseback. So the quality of the finishing is excellent. Now, however, it's a disappointment there is poor quality control with regards to the alignment of the bezel, and also the smoothness of the 120 click unidirectional ratcheting mechanism could be improved. So QC issue with the bezel is a disappointment, and the cost-cutting measure of using no AR coating on the underside of the flat sapphire crystal is very reflective, as I've shown you. So difficult piece to evaluate because we have some strong points such as the titanium case and titanium caseback, which is very good at $139 US. But then we have some cost-cutting measures with regards to the aluminium bezel insert rather than ceramic, no AR coating, and the 8215, which is the base model of Miyota movements. I would prefer to see a higher grade such as the 9015 or alternatively an NH35A. Overall, I would describe the value as okay at $139 US. I would describe the quality as being okay. I can't say the quality is good and I can't say it's excellent because of the QC issue of the bezel, lack of AR coating, and an 8215 really isn't acceptable at $139 US. So I want you to bear in mind the shortcomings of the piece. I'm not going to recommend it because of the QC issue of the bezel alignment. I think this piece needs to be refined by Boderry, and therefore then it can be called good value and good quality. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Boderry Seaturtle reference BDA007T. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video.